Our money can be used for a lot of purposes. I've found that aligning our money with our values leads to life and financial happiness. And in today's episode, we're going to challenge you to think about what values are important to you and hopefully spur some thoughts through stories and ideas.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searens, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Well, glad to have you back on Your Life, Your Money, the podcast helping you thrive in life, wealth, and retirement. I am Ben George. He's Scott Searens, president and financial advisor at Searens Financial Group there in the Chicagoland suburbs. You can find him online, lifemoneyshow.com. You can always call as well at 847-235-6989. Scott, welcome in. Good to talk to you again. What's been going on?
Hey, Ben, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, actually, my girlfriend and I, Christy is her name, my girlfriend and I went back to visit my parents in Anawan, a small town about 2 hours from where I live now. And when I say a small town, I mean like town of 900 people. But anyways, it was a great trip. I don't know, I just really, really enjoy going back to hang out with my parents, and I've got cousins that live in the area, so we got to see them, and I'll go out to dinner together. Just a lot of really good family time. So I guess, you know what, it's something that I value and cherish and just really enjoy being able to do that. So, good times in doing that. How about yourself? Now, you said that your folks live a little bit away from you, right?
Yeah, we live in Alabama. I'm in North Carolina, so it's about a 8-9 hour drive when we try to pack up everybody and hit the road back there. So they come up to visit us, though, with having a little daughter. My parents are always interested in seeing her and wanting to spend some time with her. So they make it up every 3 or 4 months to come hang out for a week or 5 days, something like that. So we get to see them a good bit. It's always great to catch up.
Yeah, no, hey, that's great. It's it's time well spent, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's we talk about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to talk today about the importance of family and values, right? Family values, because a lot of people they align their money with their values, and it's what we call values-based planning. And it's something that I know you do, and I think we could share some stories today on the podcast about clients you work with that really prioritize these values. But the good thing is you can align your planning and what you want your money to do with these things that are most important to you, right?
Yeah, and I hope today's show and conversation really challenges people to think about their values. And think about aligning their money with their values, like you had mentioned earlier. Yes, we need to make sure that our money is there to maintain our lifestyle. And I find that most of the folks that I've worked with have saved enough, or have saved more than enough to maintain, just their basic lifestyle needs. And so after that, right, my question always is like, what is this money for?
Mm-hmm.
What's the money actually for? And, we'll go through a lot of different questions to generate thoughts, generate ideas. And I think, today we'll go through some different topics that will help people with that as well. And I find a lot of times when I start to dig deeper with my clients into what's really important to them, and we start to align their money, not only with just maintaining their lifestyle, but aligning their money with values that are important to them, that's where that ultimate happiness comes from. That's when you can see that they're just really enjoying life, really enjoying what they've worked so hard to save. It no longer becomes about, making sure that we've got the biggest bucket of money when we pass away. It's about, hey, here's what's important to me. And here's what I want to accomplish with what I've saved up. And, sometimes too, when working with spouses, there's spouses that have different interest. And that's okay too, right? And that's where compromise comes in, and you can still, build a plan that works for both people. And what I've just found is like when you really start to, and I know we've talked about this before too, right? Like when you really start to get it on paper, when you get it out of our minds, because I think sometimes, right, we're like, well, I don't want to say that because what if I don't have enough money to do it? But here's my question to you. What if you do? Right? What if you actually do have enough money to do that idea that's in your mind? So we want to get the ideas out of the mind onto paper so that way we can, really plan around them and make them work or see if they can work or see what the trade-offs out there might be. So I hope we're able to generate a lot of ideas today.
Yeah, so we're going to go through some of the key values that people have. And, you might have some of these, you might have all of them, you might have none of them. But if you do have some of these, maybe you can hear some stories on how Scott has worked that planning process into meet these values for people, because it's not all about just dollars and cents, as Scott's talked about. So let's start off with family, Scott. This is one, right, that we all prioritize. Most of us do. We have children. Obviously, that's a big part of the planning. But how do you work family into it? And give me some examples of some clients you've had that have made this one of their big values priorities.
Yes, and hey, as I had mentioned from the beginning, family is most important to me, and I find it is really important to a lot of the clients that I work with, but in really some totally different ways, and I think that's what's really cool too, is like each family that I work with is completely unique, right? Unique to their own ways. So hopefully some of these stories will really help out. So there's one couple I work with, in which case when we first met, they said, one thing that we want to do is we want to take all of our children and grandchildren on a family vacation. We don't want them to have to worry about anything. We want to cover it all. And we want to take them on that vacation every other year, right? It wasn't every year. We just said, hey, we want to do this every other year. So as they brought that thought and feeling to me, as we constructed their plan and ranked, different things in accordance to and according to priority, that was like a number one priority for them. And so as we built that plan, we're able to put in a specific amount in their plan, so that way they can do that, throughout their lifetime. Or they said, hey, we at least want to do it through age 85, right? And so that's now something that we've built into their plan. And then they were able to understand, trade-offs of, well, okay, if we want to do that, maybe we're not taking, as big personal vacations in the off years, or, here's then the money that's left to, maintain our own lifestyle. But I thought that one was really unique. I thought that was cool. Now, a little bit different is I have another client who has said, you know what, I'm good. I know that I'll be able to, I believe I'll be able to maintain my lifestyle, but everything that I've saved up, and this is how important, her family is important to her, just in a different way. Everything that she's saved up, she wants to make sure that it goes as a legacy to her child or to her children. Meaning like the principal balance that she has right now, and, she's got a long retirement ahead of her. She's like, I just want to make sure that principal balance goes as a legacy to my children.
Wow.
When I were to pass away. And so now we're building that plan a little bit differently, right? So we're that person saying, hey, I'll actually take less money, less withdrawals, but I really want to make sure that, over a long period of time, we're going to be somewhere close to giving this principal balance to my children as a legacy, as a leave behind, put them in the best position possible for themselves. So there's a different way. And then a third one here is I had a client in which, their children moved to another state. And so as they got closer to retirement, part of their plan was, hey, you know what? Our kids have moved to another state. We now have grandkids. Those grandkids and our kids are super important to us. We want to be there to help out. I mean, Ben, I know you've got a daughter, so I'm guessing if you had a constant babysitter around, right, that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted to do. They just wanted to be that on-call babysitter at any point in time. And so we've constructed their plan so that way they could, pick up and move. Yep, the state would have higher state income taxes. We needed to think about that and figure that in. But that was part of their plan. And then I've had a couple clients that are couples, and the one spouse, so my last story on family, but the one spouse, as part of our meeting, they just said, hey, just make sure, no matter what, if something were to happen to me, I want to make sure my spouse is okay. Because they've seen in their past where, maybe their father or their mother passed away, and it left the surviving spouse kind of in dire straits. And so for them, they're like, we want to enjoy our life today, but really make sure as part of the plan, if one of us were to pass away, my spouse will always be able to maintain their, and so that was really important to them. So hopefully there's some stories there to, like I said, get people thinking about family and maybe some thoughts of what they want to do in their specific plan if family's an important value to them.
Yes, it's interesting to hear the different forms that takes, right? The different priorities. You think family, and you kind of just say, okay, yeah, you just want to make sure your family's taken care of, but the priorities are even different within that value. So those are some interesting stories on how you made that happen. All right. Faith's another big one for a lot of people, right? Not only do you want to be able to take care of yourself and in retirement and maybe your family, but also you want your money to do good, or at least you want your money to align with how you feel about your faith and your values there. So I'm curious how you've worked this into what you do, Scott.
Yeah, so I think again it's just recognizing that faith is a priority for this person or for this couple. For instance, I've got one couple here in which they do not have children. And so if they were to pass away, they want to make sure a portion of what they've worked so hard to save goes to their church. Another couple who also likes to support their church, but it's not for them. It's not waiting until something were to happen to them. They want to continue to support their church now. And this actually brings up a planning item that can be utilized. So this couple, they're in their mid-70s, and they've got money saved up in an IRA. And so since they're over the age of 70 and a half, they're actually able to make qualified charitable distributions to their church. They could actually make it to any charitable organization, but based on that being a priority to them, they make it to their church. So, for example, if they had to take out and I'm just going to use easy numbers here, if they've got that IRA and because they're in their 70s, they're going to have to take a required minimum distribution. And let's just say it was going to be $10,000. Well, if that came to them and then they gave it to their church, so it came to them first into their checking account, they gave it to their church. Based on this couple's overall situation, they're not going to get a tax deduction for it. They're just going to get the standard deduction when it comes to their taxes. And they're also now, because they took that $10,000 into their checking account, they're also going to get that other $10,000 added on as taxable income. But what we're able to do are these qualified charitable distributions where we're just taking that $10,000, and they said, hey, Scott, we're going to donate all that to our church anyway. So we're taking that $10,000 and it's going straight from their IRA to the church. And now that $10,000, because it went straight from their IRA to the church, no longer adds into their taxable income. So a couple benefits here. They're, benefiting the church. They're helping out their organization. And at the same time, technically, I guess in a roundabout way, they are also getting that deduction on their taxes. So just a little bit of planning guidance there, but yes, I find faith is also important to folks, and there are ways to help people give back to their churches or to their organizations if they so choose.
So family and faith, two that immediately come to mind when you think about values. Here's one that maybe you don't just think immediately this is a value that I have, but your career. If it's something that you prioritize and you think, when you think about retirement, you don't really have a timeline because you don't see yourself retiring at any point. When somebody really loves their career as much as that, Scott, what does that mean for their plan?
This is a good one that I'm seeing happen more and more often. I know, Ben, we've had that conversation in the past, right, of kind of like striking the word retirement and just calling it financial independence,
Yep.
because I find more and more often folks aren't looking to just jump right into retirement saying, hey, I'm totally done with the work scene. And so I'll give a couple stories here. I've got one couple where the one spouse really loves what she does, and she's just like, I'm going to continue on. Like, I love what I do. I feel like I do really well at it, and I can kind of create my own hours, so I'm going to do that. Now, the other spouse was at a full-time job, and they're like, okay, I'm going to retire. I just, I no longer want to be at this job. Now, they are financially independent. Do they need to work? Absolutely not. But the other spouse okay, they're going to retire from that one full-time job. He's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be bored with my time, and I really want to keep my mind and my body active. And so he's actually out there applying for just other jobs at, local places to do things that are activities that excites that person. So if you love to do home renovation, maybe you want to go and work part-time for your local Lowe's or Home Depot. If you love, if you love gardening, maybe you want to go work for a local nursery, right? And do something like that. And the key here is that these part-time jobs might not cover all of the person's income needs. And so it's just understanding that and understanding kind of what their new income will be pulling in, and then saying, okay, hey, great. Now that we know that, we also know to maintain your lifestyle, to do and to align, again, money with values and other things that you want to do. Here's the portfolio withdrawals that can be made to make sure that you can continue to maintain, do what you want to do, plus any other additions or activities. So there's one story. I've got another client who, and this is something for people to think about too, who's actually picked up consulting work while they're still working at their current job, right? So they haven't retired yet. They're picking up some consulting work on the side. They're probably making themselves a little bit more busier than normal right now. And then they'll retire from their one job and just go right into their consulting work more as like a part-time work. So, like we've talked, there's no right or wrong answer. Just because somebody has come up, or Social Security says that there's this full retirement age, or it doesn't mean anybody actually has to retire. And if being physically and mentally active are important to you, and the way that you feel that you like to do that is through a career or through a job, then hey, that's great. And there are tons of ways that we can construct a plan around that.
Yeah, no, and you talked about it, like a lot of people are going that direction, right? Where we're just, hey, you can work kind of where you want, when you want, and you don't have to retire in the traditional sense necessarily. So that term financial independence is one that I feel like that's going to be the direction we go towards more, Scott. Like retirement will still be the word, but financial independence will become much more mainstream, because that's ultimately what you're working towards, where you can kind of control the time that you want to work and how much energy you want to put into your career while not having to get rid of it altogether,
And I find that's what people are wanting to understand is, and that's the answer that I'm here to help provide them, is you're financially independent, right? So if you just decided to quit working today, you're financially independent. Now, what do you value the most, right? And for these people, if they value working or a career-based type activity, then great, go do that. You want to be happy with your time, and I think that's what's important, and that's what we're working towards.
All right, how about education? So there's a couple of different ways we can go with this one, Scott. So whether you're someone that really wants to continue learning, if you have a passion for learning and you want to continue your lifelong education, there's that. But there's also the grandparents that want to help with their grandchildren's education and help pay for tuition in college. I know this is one that a lot of people probably try to work into their planning when they're carving out, how much money they're going to need for stuff.
Absolutely. Now, I don't have stories to necessarily share on the first one, but I did want to share a story in regards to that second point that you brought up. And I
Yeah.
find, because I work with a lot of people who are age 55 plus, and you're right, there are lots of folks that say, you know what, I just want to keep my mind active, and I think that's great too. If you want to keep your mind active and, part of your financial independence is to go and continue to learn, I think that's awesome. The one that I've, primarily helped folks with is I've got a lot of clients who, want to help their grandkids and make sure that their grandkids are able to graduate from debt free. And so just, one story is that I've got a client who that was their exact goal. They've got a grandson and they don't want their grandson to have to worry about any sort of, college debt. And at the same time, and here's where always, the interesting parts can come in, they also didn't want to overstep any boundaries with the parents. And so we talked through that. We worked through that. We talked about conversations that they could have with their kids just to make sure it was okay that they're helping their kids with their grandson's, college education. And then once we got through those conversations, it was, well, how much, right? If here's how much the parents are contributing, then how much do the grandparents need to contribute to, kind of work to that overall goal? And so then we worked through the amounts. And one thing to think about is, this couple had, some money saved up. And a lot of times when we think about saving for something, we think about doing it kind of like on a monthly basis, right? Like our 401ks. Hey, we'll just automate it and we'll put away, $1,000 a month or whatever the amount might be over a certain period of time. And so we were kind of going through this discussion and they said, okay, how much should we put away per month? And I said, well, actually looking at your situation, you would be able to take a lump sum and put away a lump sum today. And the power of that is by putting away a lump sum up front, right, first, is that now it's that power of compounding. So they took that lump sum, they put that aside for their grandkids or their grandson's college education, so that can continue to compound. And then if they want to make additional contributions, great. But just by doing that, it would actually provide more benefit than looking at it on an ongoing monthly basis. So, really thinking about it differently, and for them that was important. So they said, hey, we'd rather do this than maybe take an extra vacation or do something in our lifestyle. So just like, when we were talking about family, if this is something that's important and is a higher priority, then we look at this and we put this at the higher priority, and then we say, are we still able to do those other values that are important, or do we need to make any sort of trade-offs?
We're talking about values-based planning, why it's essential, and we got a couple more left to go through. How about charitable giving? This kind of ties into faith a little bit, but I know charitable giving, it can be very important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll talk, like there's an organization, we had a podcast in the past, if folks want to go listen to it, like an organization that's important to me is Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I'm a big brother in that overall organization to an awesome little brother who's I've gotten to watch him grow up from, I think when we started together, he was maybe 6 years old. And the cool thing, Ben, was like tossing him the keys to my car to go, all right, let's practice driving now. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool, right? And so I totally see how there's organizations out there that people are involved in or that are important to them. So just a couple stories here. One, I have a client who was given a scholarship when he was in high school. It was actually a scholarship to go to a specific high school, and he really felt like that changed the direction of his life. And so that's something that's now important to him, is to give a scholarship or be part of giving a scholarship to another child to hopefully change the direction of their life. So again, it's maybe there's something that's important to you. If so, we want to get it out of the mind. We want to get it onto paper and see how we can help you achieve that goal. And that's what we're doing for that specific client. I have another client. I'm just going to use dollar amounts here to kind of, give some thoughts and ideas on things. But, they contribute a decent amount to multiple charities throughout the year. It's over $15,000 a year that they're giving in charitable contributions. And just by looking at what they were doing, we're able to change up some things, I'll say, and use things such as donor-advised funds to help provide them a greater tax deduction. So not only are they able to continue to give to the charities, do things that they want to do, we made sure, because based on the amount, they said, hey, would we be able to continue to do this in our future? So we put that in the plan, made sure that that's part of the plan, but also changed the way that they were doing it because we saw ways that could bring them additional or potential additional tax deductions. So, I find, like you had mentioned, there are a lot of things that are important to a lot of people. If so, let's take it out of our minds, let's put it on paper and see how we can plan around it.
All right, I got one more for you.
Okay.
We'll end with this one. Fun. You might not think that's a value, but for a lot of people, they want to enjoy their money. And this is something you can accomplish, right? The whole idea is to enjoy what you've worked so hard for.
You're exactly right. And to me, that's like the number one thing. I just want to make sure, right, that people enjoy their money, enjoy what they've worked so hard for. Now, I think when we hear fun, the number one thing that probably comes to most people's minds are putting money aside for vacations. And so I'll start, we've got stories there, right, where I've got clients where we've incorporated as part of their plan, hey, we're going to take and put $10,000 aside each and every year to go on vacations, or $15,000 or $20,000. So that's one. I think that's a normal one that people think about. Here's a few other stories for you. Hopefully it helps spur some ideas for people that are listening. I've got one client where not only is family important to them, but what they do with their family, right? Or how they spend their time together. So they wanted to not only move closer to their family, but part of that fun is as they move closer, we needed to purchase a new place, but they also wanted to make sure that there was a pool at that new place. So that way their kids and their grandkids would want to come over and hang out with them, right? I mean, Perfect thought.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we've incorporated into their plan, is how do we make sure that we can, purchase this new house, do the renovations that we need to do, and get this pool so the family can come over and hang out. I've got another client where just having a lake house is really important to them. And it's a house that was actually, owned by the person's father. And so constructing a plan to purchase this home, from the parents, instead of a legacy type of a situation. So that way the home continued to stay, with that person and in the family. And that's what they look at for fun, right? Their fun is going just to sit on the lake each and every weekend. I've got another client who, it's kind of like a combination of fun. We've constructed their plan. We always, make sure there's enough on the growth side of the portfolio for the future fund, but on that safer side of the portfolio so they can do what they need to do today. And this client has a home that they go to in Arizona, but at the same time, they just really love vacations. And so, they just recently got back from a catamaran trip, and then they've got an Alaskan cruise coming up. So for them, they might live a very simple life, but it was putting more in the overall plan for vacations, for travel, for, these once a year things, plus to maintain their home in Arizona. So when it's really cold here in Illinois, they're able to get the heck out and go enjoy that sunshine.
Right.
And that probably brings me to my last one, which I've been hearing in a couple of my latest meetings here, because we live in Illinois and we have these wonderful winters. A lot of people just say, hey, how do we construct a plan where, we're good, we want to maintain our simple lifestyle, but we just want to maintain it somewhere else in the winters, right?
Yeah.
Like somewhere a lot warmer. And so we're putting money aside for that and fully understanding their plan around that. So hopefully today was just to generate ideas. No ideas there's no wrong idea, I
Right.
guess, right? Because we're all unique. If after going through this, if I were to ask you your priorities, Ben, they'd probably be different than mine and different than anybody's that comes into the door here.
Exactly. And the whole idea is that no matter what your value that you emphasize the most, there is a plan that you can build to match up with that. So that's the whole reason why you want to work with a financial advisor. And you can always do that with Scott at Searns Financial Group. You can find him online, lifemoneyshow.com. All right. One question before we get out of here today, Scott, that came in from Doug, I'd like to get your thoughts on. I don't like my 401k investment options, but my company says I'm not eligible to roll the money to an outside account. I know people have moved their 401k in the past, so how does that work?
Yeah, great question from Doug here. This is something that we're working with clients on all the time as they approach this one specific age, but it sounds like Doug's plan doesn't offer this. So a lot of companies at age 59 and a half will allow you to do what they call as an in-service withdrawal, meaning you can take your money out, but I know what you might be thinking, hey, if I take my money out, I'm going to get taxed. Instead of taking it out, the in-service withdrawal is actually doing a rollover. So what Doug's hearing other people doing is they're doing a rollover out of their company plan over into an IRA or into a Roth IRA, depending where their money is coming from. And a lot of times people will do this so that way they can start investing their funds according to the strategy that they want to have in place so that they are able to retire on time. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't sound like Doug's plan offers this. So if Doug wants to, invest but not use the funds that are necessarily in his plan, another thing that he could ask about is a lot of companies in their 401k plans, they offer what's called kind of a like a brokerage account, meaning they offer an account where you in your 401k plan don't have to use the funds that are there. You can kind of shift this money over into this self-directed brokerage account. Again, it's still in the 401k, but then you get to pick and choose the funds that you want to use. So maybe that's an alternative option for them. But, unfortunately, there are some companies out there just like Doug's that just don't allow that rollover until you retire, until you fully terminate your employment.
Thank you for that question, Doug. If you have one for us, you can send it in via the website, lifemoneyshow.com. You can also call Scott directly if you prefer at 847-235-6989. All right, Scott, we'll close it out on that note. Thank you for listening to Your Life, Your Money. Scott, take care this week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care. Thanks, Ben.
Searns Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Searns Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Searns Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Searns Financial Group, Inc.